Thank you for watching my video. This presentation is being made exclusively for the Center on Nationalism Studies. Right-wing Christian nationalism in America, the new face of U.S. domestic terrorism. The United States, and indeed the entire world, was shocked with the live video images broadcast internationally when thousands of supporters of President Donald Trump breached the barricaded doors of the U.S. Capitol building on January 6, 2021, assaulted U.S. Capitol police officers and members of the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police Department, with some rioters then rampaging through the Capitol in search of Vice President Mike Pence and members of Congress with the intent to kidnap and kill them. For Americans watching these surreal scenes unfold on their television, computer, or cell phone, it was like watching news of a coup attempt in some faraway country with an unstable government. Scenes of a crazed and angry mob in a banana republic trying to oust a particularly repressive autocrat. Or perhaps it was happening in some Eastern European nation from the former Soviet Union. These were scenes that Americans were used to seeing from time to time. Not pleasant scenes, to be sure, but scenes and images that they could understand. But they could not understand these images emanating from within their own country, within their national Capitol building, the heart of their government, their democracy. For most Americans watching those scenes unfold live before their eyes on that horrific day, the scenes of the insurrection that were broadcast live from Washington, D.C. were nothing short of an unimaginable nightmare they thought they would never have to endure. That searing national tragedy has left deep scars on the American psyche that are still raw, still unhealed, and if anything, are worse today than on that 6th day in January. Who then were the people in that violent mob that besieged and then forced their way into the U.S. Capitol? That is a complex question that U.S. law enforcement and intelligence agencies have been investigating 24/7 since the insurrection. There were basically two groups present in the vicinity of the Capitol complex that day. Average citizens who voted for Trump, believed the misinformation about a stolen election by the Democrats and the need to defend democracy. The second group, although smaller in number, were far more dangerous. These were members of extremist right-wing militias such as the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, and the Three Percenters. Leaders of these militias were behind-the-scenes online organizers of the January 6th rally for Trump earlier that day, as well as the march on the Capitol afterwards. These militia members were the conduit and the spark that lit the fuse for the insurrection. They represent a new breed of fringe right-wing extremists that have come out of the political shadows since 2016 and into the mainstream of Republican culture. They represent the future of right-wing domestic terrorism. All the people that participated in the events of January 6th have one important thing in common: their belief in Christian nationalism. Loosely defined, Christian nationalism is a belief system that posits that white Orthodox Christians of mostly Northern European heritage originally settled the United States and established a set of values based on their common racial, ethnic backgrounds and their fundamentalist Christian religion. Although America has always had large and vibrant communities of faith, with Christianity being the predominant religion, as with many Western nations, the number of families regularly practicing their religion has fallen dramatically over the last 50 or so years. In addition, as an immigrant nation, America has welcomed millions of immigrants that practice religions other than Christianity, such as Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, and many others. However, These new non-Christian, non-white immigrants now threaten to outnumber the native white Christian Americans in just a few years, supplanting them as the dominant power in the United States, a place they have held since the nation's founding. These new immigrants did not share a common Northern European cultural heritage, religion, or appearance with many prior generations of immigrants. Many did, however, bring with them both a willingness to work in low-paying jobs. Still others brought an advanced education in highly skilled technical fields which commanded high-paying salaries. Both of these immigrant groups were seen as stealing jobs from native white Christian Americans. This clash of religion, culture, language, education, and race have long been a simmering problem in America that has only heated up even more so in the past 30 to 40 years. That problem boiled over on January 6, 2021. There is now a great cultural divide and an almost impenetrable wall between white Christian nationalists and the socialist libs, who, either because of education, race, political views, or social status, are diametrically opposed to the grievances voiced by Christian nationalism. Believers in Christian nationalism are fed a steady stream of misinformation and lies 24/7 by extremist right-wing media such as Fox News, Breitbart, Newsmax, One American Network, and others that portray the Democrats, mainstream media, and educated elites as the enemy of the people, Marxists, socialists, that will destroy America if immediate actions are not taken to stop their destructive socialist agenda, using violence if necessary. According to several recent polls, between 50 to 70% of Republican voters truly believe that Joe Biden and the Democratic Party run an international ring of pedophiles and child traffickers that drink human blood. These same polls show that the vast majority of Republicans believe that Joe Biden and the Democrats were responsible for the insurrection on January 6th, not right-wing supporters of Donald Trump, and that Donald Trump is totally innocent of any incitement or responsibility for the insurrection. In addition, all recent polls show that an overwhelming majority of Republican voters, 80 to 90%, believe that the Democrats stole the 2020 election fraudulently, and therefore Joe Biden is not the legitimate president of the United States. Donald Trump is. This, then, is the current state of affairs for the American culture. I hesitate to use the word culture because I don't believe that at the present time we have a coherent culture in this country. What we have right now are two competing and opposing concepts of the American nation, the American experiment, the American idea. One concept is of an exclusively white Christian nation with very conservative and non-tolerant fundamentalist beliefs. The other concept is a more inclusive, tolerant, socially progressive, and science-based culture with no religious dogma. The evangelical Christians are a good example of the fundamentalist Christian nationalist belief system. They share no moral or ethical beliefs with Donald Trump, yet they enthusiastically supported him in both 2016 and 2020. Why? Because he promised to appoint pro-life, anti-abortion judges. All Trump's other sins, transgressions, alleged crimes, and immoral anti-Christian behavior were ignored by this allegedly pious group of conservative Christians, while they made this deal in exchange for a more powerful voice in the American government. The support of Trump by the evangelical Christian community in the United States gave cover to right-wing extremist militia members that are not affiliated with any organized church to also give their support to Trump. The world witnessed a very disturbing display of this support on January 6th as militia members knelt in prayer beneath a giant wooden cross they had placed in front of the U.S. Capitol, just before erecting a gallows with a functioning noose in preparation for executing Mike Pence, Nancy Pelosi, and other members of the U.S. Congress by hanging them until dead on live television directly across the street from the United States Capitol. This concept of America supports walling itself off from the rest of the world, literally, in the case of the border with Mexico, and placing a more or less permanent moratorium on all immigration. They supported separating young children and infants from their mothers and placing them in cages on the Mexican border for weeks and months at a time. Violent and even deadly attacks against immigrant families has become more common by believers in this America. This concept of America supports abandoning virtually all of our international military and economic alliances and commitments to friendly nations, including NATO, the EU, and NAFTA. They believe in making America great again by becoming an isolationist nation that has no allies, supports no one, and depends on no one for support. This America believes Vladimir Putin was telling the truth when he told Donald Trump that he did not interfere with the elections of 2016 or 2020. This concept of America firmly believes Donald J. Trump was appointed by God to vanquish the pedophile Democrats by rounding them up en masse and putting them in prison with or without a trial. A small but vocal number even advocate extrajudicial executions of Democratic leaders like Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, and Kamala Harris. This concept of America prefers a dictatorial, one-man theocracy-style government of personality led by Donald Trump, whatever the law is that he says it is. Fundamentalist Christian values based on a literal interpretation on the Bible will be the new law of the land, a land resembling the fictional nation of Gilead in the book and TV series The Handmaid's Tale. The other concept of America is based on the rule of law, as spelled out in the Declaration of Independence, the U.S. Constitution, and in numerous court decisions and case precedents decided over the past 2.5 centuries. They believe in commonly accepted concepts of truth and reality, not conspiracy theories, Facebook posts, or tweets. In stark contrast to the other concept of America, this group, comprising about 50% of the voting population, believes in science, the inherent right of every American to affordable health care and housing, free education, at least through 4 years of college, access to healthy food in all communities, and protecting and preserving the environment. They welcome all immigrants that seek a better life in America and who wish to contribute to making this country even better than it already is. This concept of America believes in sacrificing together for the common good of their community, not in demanding individual liberty at the expense of harming their neighbors. Although they highly value their freedom and individual liberty, they also understand that there is no such thing as unlimited freedom or liberty. Freedom and liberty both come with responsibilities to your fellow Americans and indeed to your fellow inhabitants of the earth. Violate these responsibilities and your freedom may be curtailed to protect others. This concept of America understands those values and beliefs. This concept of America acknowledges that the world is a dangerous and unpredictable place that requires making friends and alliances, military, diplomatic, and economic, with other nations having similar values. They also realize that there are rogue and authoritarian states that do not share our values, against whom we must always be vigilant. They understand this requires a commitment to the common defense by supporting a strong military and intelligence services, as well as supporting diplomatic efforts prior to contemplating military action. This group of Americans understands treason and betrayal to our Constitution by citizens or elected officials, providing aid and comfort to hostile governments, their military and intelligence services. They also understand when a U.S. president flagrantly violates his oath of office by attempting to strong-arm a president of a foreign nation to gather derogatory information on a political rival of the American president. This concept of America clearly understood what it meant when hundreds of far-right Christian nationalists, supporters of Donald Trump, violently stormed and occupied the United States Capitol on January 6, 2021, and attempted to disrupt the official confirmation of the electoral victory of President Joseph Biden. They clearly understood what it meant when Confederate flags representing black slavery, were waved outside the Capitol and then later were paraded around inside the Capitol by giddy Trump supporters. They clearly understood what it meant as they watched these fake patriots beat, maim, and kill police officers both inside and outside the Capitol that day. They clearly understood what the rioters meant as they chanted, "Kill Mike Pence" and "Kill Nancy Pelosi." They also clearly understood what it means when virtually all elected Republican officials still refuse to concede that Joe Biden is the legitimate president, and then refuse to authorize an investigation of the events leading up to and during the insurrection on January 6th. This concept of America clearly understands all of this, and they are saddened and disgusted by what they understand. The United States of America in the summer of 2021 is a tale of two nations. One nation lives in a QAnon-induced fantasy land of dangerous lies and delusions and seems to be in the death-like grip of Donald Trump, whom they worship as a God-anointed prophet or cult leader, or both. This group is committed to eliminating all Democrats from the political landscape in the next two elections, whether through legal or illegal means, peacefully or violently. A sizable number support making violent threats, including death threats, against public officials and their families for failing to ensure Republican victories or enacting Republican ballot initiatives. These threats continue to this day. National and state Republican Party organizations support voter suppression laws in dozens of states that will make it more difficult for people of color to vote in the future. This obvious and transparent 21st century version of the Jim Crow laws of the late 19th and early 20th centuries are geared towards defeating Democrats at the ballot box by prohibiting millions of Democratic voters of color from casting their votes. Voter intimidation at the polling stations has also been employed by this concept of the American nation and can be expected to continue during the next elections as well. The other concept of the American nation desperately tries to reconcile itself with the violent, delusional, and anti-democratic QAnon faction, also known as the Republican Party, that is described in the preceding paragraphs. In many ways, this anti-QAnon concept of the American nation is outgunned both figuratively and literally. Currently, this half of the American nation, comprised of both Democrats and independents, does not seem to have any definitive answers on defeating the lies and disinformation coming out of the Republican Party and its well-funded right-wing sycophant media apparatus. In fact, Donald Trump and the Republican Party seem to be getting stronger every day, with the outlook for Democrats hanging on to the White House, Congress, and the Senate fading with every passing week. The concept of the American nation is very much a work in progress right now, with no one able to predict its future configuration, culture, or direction with any real certainty. Thank you very much for watching.